The sound came first. Not words, not faces, not context. Just metal hitting metal. A sharp, violent crack sliced through the air of the studio kitchen, the kind of sound that makes heads turn without thinking. A split second later, the unmistakable sizzle of pork meeting scorching iron erupted. Oil snapped. Fat hissed. Steam exploded upward like breath released after holding it too long. For a moment, nothing else existed but sound. But this wasn't the Philippines. It wasn't a roadside eatery in Pampanga, where smoke clings to clothes and laughter spills into the street. It wasn't a family kitchen, where recipes are remembered by feel, not measurements, and the pan has cooked 100 meals before this one. This was different. This was a high-end studio in Istanbul. Sterile, polished, unforgiving. The lights were blinding, LED panels burning down like interrogation lamps. Every surface gleamed. Every angle was intentional. 3 cameras rolled at once, one wide, one tight, one waiting for a reaction. At the center of it all stood a man. Still, confident, untouchable. A Turkish chef with 5 million followers. A name built on sharp tongues and sharper opinions. A reputation forged from humiliation, marketed as honesty. He didn't rush. He let the sizzle fill the silence. Then he leaned toward the camera. His lips curved, just enough to be cruel. And with a calm that made it worse, he spoke. This Filipino dish. I wouldn't feed this to my dog. The live chat stuttered. Messages stopped mid-sentence. Emojis froze. Thousands of viewers sat perfectly still, as if waiting to be told they hadn't heard what they'd just heard. Then he reached for the plate. It was still screaming hot, still alive with sound, still rising with steam. He lifted it slowly, giving the cameras time to catch every angle, and threw it straight into the trash. The metal bin rang out with a hollow clang, loud, final, unforgiving. The sizzle died instantly. Silence rushed in to replace it, and in that silence something traveled far beyond that studio, across time zones, across oceans, across millions of screens. At the same moment in apartments, kitchens, dorm rooms, and break rooms around the world, Filipinos felt it. Not anger first, not outrage, something deeper, a sudden collective punch to the chest, as if a memory had been insulted, as if a hand had reached through the screen and pushed something sacred into the trash. And nobody in that studio understood yet. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of his collapse. It wasn't just food, it was history. Sisig wasn't invented in restaurants. It didn't come from menus or culinary schools. It wasn't designed to impress critics or win awards. It was born from survival, from scraps no one wanted, from leftovers others discarded, from hands that learned to make do, because there was no other choice. It came from ingenuity forced by hunger, from people who were told they had nothing, and proved that even nothing could be turned into something meaningful. Over time, that something became sacred, not because it was expensive, not because it was refined, but because it carried stories, stories cooked into the pan, stories passed without being written down, stories remembered by sound, by smell, by heat. So when that plate hit the trash bin, it didn't feel like food being thrown away. It felt like something else was discarded too. A grandmother's hands, rough from years of work, guiding a younger one at the stove. A migrant worker's sacrifice, cooking flavors of home in a foreign place just to survive another day. A father's memory, quietly tied to a dish he never explained, but always respected. Across the world, the reaction was instant and silent. OFWs stopped working mid-shift, hands frozen in factories, kitchens, hospitals. Families replayed the clip again and again, not speaking, as if words might make it worse. Chefs stared at their phones in disbelief, knowing exactly what had been insulted and why it hurt. And still, no one knew what would happen next. No one imagined how far this moment would travel. No one guessed that one forced bite of this same dish, the one he threw away without tasting, would unravel a man's entire life, piece by piece, in front of the very people he thought he could never offend. Before that night, the world knew him as Chef Mura. Not just a chef, a spectacle, the maverick, the untouchable, the man who said what others wouldn't, the man who crossed lines and called it truth. He built his fame on harsh reviews, not critique, humiliation. He mocked dishes he didn't understand. He mocked cultures he never bothered to learn. He mocked grandmother's recipes, the kind written in memory, not ink. And he did it smiling. That was the brand. Audiences loved the drama, loved the cruelty dressed up as honesty, loved watching pride get sliced apart on camera. Restaurants feared him. Owners held their breath when he walked in. Chefs wiped sweat from their palms before serving a single plate. Sponsors paid well for that fear, for the sharp tongue, for the millions of eyes that followed every word. Mura learned something dangerous early on. That controversy was currency, that attention erased accountability, that numbers could silence consequences, and so he came to believe something deeply, that he was untouchable, that he could say anything, do anything, discard anything, and walk away untouched. What no one knew, not his viewers, not his critics, not even Murat himself, was where that arrogance truly came from, because it wasn't confidence, it was inheritance, and it was rooted in a past he never questioned, never understood, and was about to confront in the most painful way possible. Mura came from a long line of Ottoman chefs, men whose kitchens were ruled by order, by hierarchy, by tradition treated as law. They were perfectionists, traditionalists, men who believed food was not about comfort or connection, but control. In their world, a dish was judged the way a soldier is judged, by precision, obedience, and discipline. At the center of that world stood Mura's father, Kemal Demirolu, strict beyond reason, unyielding, exacting. Only food from their region was allowed, only techniques passed down through bloodlines, only flavors that had already been approved by history. No improvisation, no curiosity, no deviation. Mistakes weren't corrected. They were remembered. In that house, food was never an expression of love. There were no shared laughs at the table, no stories passed between biters, no warmth rising with the steam. Food was a lesson, a test, a standard to be met. And Mura learned early that approval came only through control. So when Filipino viewers flooded his comments, begging him to try sisig, not demanding, just hopeful, he didn't hesitate. He laughed, a short, dismissive sound. Filipino food? Isn't that just leftovers fried in sadness? He said it easily, casually, as if it were obvious, as if the joke had already been agreed upon. He leaned back in his chair, confident, waiting for the response he was used to. He expected the internet to laugh with him. He expected applause, clipped reactions, trending jokes. What he didn't expect was silence turning into fury. What he didn't expect was that this time the world would not play along. And what he could not yet imagine was that those words, spoken so lightly, would become the first crack in everything he believed made him untouchable. The live stream was titled, "Trying the Most Requested Dish, Filipino Sisig." Simple, neutral, almost polite. Tens of thousands joined within minutes. Some out of curiosity, wanting to see how it would taste, how it would be judged. Some out of nervous anticipation, hoping quietly that maybe this time he would be fair. Some already angry, bracing themselves for what they feared was coming. The dish arrived in Istanbul hours earlier, not from a restaurant chain, not from a studio kitchen. It was cooked by Filipino workers, people who knew sisig the way it was meant to be known, the Pampanga style, crispy pork crackling on iron, fat rendered just right, heat balanced by calamansi's sharp brightness, no shortcuts, no fusion, no apology. When the plate was set down in front of Mura, the sound was unmistakable, a violent, joyful sizzle. Steam curled upward. Oil popped against the edges of the pan. For a brief moment, the room held its breath. Mura leaned forward. He didn't taste it. He poked it with his fork, as if testing something unclean. He leaned closer, sniffed, his face twisted. It smells like burnt fear. The chat detonated. Messages flooded in too fast to read. Flags, caps locked rage, broken sentences typed through shaking hands. And then, in front of more than 600,000 live viewers, Murat stood. He lifted the plate slowly, deliberately, making sure the cameras caught everything. The steam, the grease, the weight of it, and without hesitation, he threw it away. The trash bin rang out with a dull, metallic thud. The sizzle died. Twitter erupted within seconds. Clips spread faster than explanations. TikTok stitched the moment from every angle. Sponsors' phones lit up. PR teams scrambled. Emergency meetings were called behind closed doors. But the real reckoning didn't come from corporations. It came quietly, privately, one message at a time. And Mura had no idea yet that those messages would pull him far beyond the studio, far beyond the internet, and straight into a past he never knew existed. The first message arrived quietly. No profile photo, no name, no threats. Just a blank account. It was short, almost polite. You don't know what sisig means to us. If you did, you wouldn't have thrown it away. Come to Pampanga if you're brave. Murat read it once, then again. He smirked. A challenge, a dare, internet noise. He tossed his phone onto the table, already bored. People always reacted like this. Outrage passed, views spiked, life moved on. This was no different. At least that's what he told himself. But the message lingered, not because it was angry, but because it wasn't. There was no insult, no profanity, no threat of revenge, just certainty, a confidence that unsettled him more than rage ever could. He laughed it off, went to sleep, and told himself it would fade by morning. It didn't, because the second message didn't come from a stranger. It came from someone whose hands had actually cooked the dish he threw away. And when Murat opened it, the tone changed completely. From challenge to something far heavier, something he couldn't scroll past. My name is Teresa. That was how the message began. No anger, no accusation, just a name. She was 56 years old, a Filipino domestic worker living in Istanbul, invisible to most people, essential to many. She had cooked the sisig, not for a live stream, not for recognition, not for applause. She cooked it the way she cooked everything, quietly, carefully, with the habits of someone who had spent a lifetime feeding others without being seen. She made it during her only hour of rest, after long days of work, after aching joints, after a body that rarely had time to recover. Her husband had died recently. No long goodbye, no closure. Her son was sick, lying in a hospital bed back home in the Philippines, waiting for money she sent every month, waiting for a mother who could not come home. That plate of sisig was not content. It was comfort. It was memory. It was the closest thing to home she could afford. When you threw it away, wrote, it felt like you threw me away. Murat stared at the screen. He didn't type. He didn't delete it. He just sat there. Pride kept his fingers still, the same pride that had built his career. So he didn't reply. He told himself silence was strength, that responding would only fuel the fire. But silence has weight, and this time it didn't protect him. It isolated him. And while Murat stayed quiet, the world around him began to close in, faster, louder, and far beyond his control. The collapse didn't come all at once. It came in waves. Sponsors dropped him, quietly at first. Emails labeled pausing partnership. Phone calls that ended too quickly. Subscribers vanished by the thousands. The numbers refreshed downward, again and again, like a clock counting something down. Restaurants cut ties. Menus were edited overnight. His name disappeared from walls, from websites, from places that once celebrated him. Filipino vloggers went further. They pulled apart his words. They replayed the clip frame by frame. They explained, calmly, clearly, why it wasn't just a joke. Across Europe, OFWs organized boycotts, quiet ones, relentless ones. Workers stopped recommending places he had touched. Communities warned each other in group chats. A reputation built in years began to crumble in days. Mura watched it all unfold from behind a screen he couldn't escape. Then came a third message, different from the rest. A burner account. No history, no name, just 2 lines. Go to Angeles City. Eat real sisig. Attached was a video, 5 seconds long. No narration, no explanation. An elderly man stood behind a small, battered stove in a tiny carinderia. The pan hit the flame. Sisig sizzled. Smoke rose in soft, familiar curls. Pork crackled. Onions snapped. Oil sang against iron. Mura's breath caught. He replayed the clip. Then again. There was something about the man's face, the way he moved, the way he held the pan, the way he leaned slightly forward as if listening to the food. Mura felt his chest tighten. That face. It wasn't just familiar. It felt like a memory he had buried so deeply he didn't even know it was there. And for the first time since the livestream, Mura didn't feel angry. He felt afraid. Because whatever that video was pointing toward, it wasn't internet drama. It was personal, and it was waiting for him. Records showed something shocking. His father had lived in Pampanga in the 1980s. 4 years, then disappeared. Murat booked a flight. No cameras, no team, just questions. When he arrived at the carinderia, Teresa stood waiting. And beside her, an elderly man. "This is Lolo Senan," she whispered. "He taught your father." Everything Murat believed about his family shattered. A plate of sisig was placed in front of him. Real sisig. He lifted the spoon. His hand shook. 1 bite. Crunch. Heat. Tang, then memory. A childhood kitchen. His father cooking. Wiping. His eyes. A dish someone once made for me when I needed it most. Murat broke down. I dishonored my father. Right there, he opened YouTube Studio, deleted the live stream, deleted videos, then deleted the entire channel. 5 million subscribers, gone, no apology video, no explanation, just silence. Teresa handed him a knife. "If you want to rebuild," she said, "start here." He chopped onions slowly, learning, listening. For the first time in his life, he wasn't judging food. He was honoring it. Outside, Manila buzzed with life. Inside that small kitchen, a story that began with disrespect ended with something stronger than pride. Understanding. Murat took another bite. This time, he didn't taste shame. He tasted home.